Welcome back to Out Loud, the Selective Mutism podcast.
This is Anne, Chelsea's mom.
This is Chelsea, Anne's daughter. We wanted to thank everyone for listening. We've been seeing some exciting stats about the podcast. And we actually got our first review, and it was a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. So we wanted to shout out Run Mama Run on Apple Podcasts, and she said, "You two rock," and she gave us 5 stars, and she said, "Thank you so much for launching this podcast. I'm a mom to a 13-year-old girl with late onset SM. Just started about 6 months ago, and I haven't found any specific resources for teens who have not had it all their lives. The topics you plan to cover are excellent, and I know will be a huge help and loving support to us all. Keep going. I am staying tuned." So thank you so much. We definitely want to talk about teens in a separate episode.
It was just nice to have feedback.
Yeah,
it was like
we
our
love
first one. We were so excited to get it. We're like, yay,
Right.
Somebody's listening. Someone likes what we're doing.
So if you enjoy the podcast and you want us to keep doing it, go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review and give us some stars. We'd also love it if you would suggest some topics you're interested in. I know what I want to talk about, but it might not be what you want to hear, so give us some ideas if you have any. If you're new to the podcast and you don't really know what selective mutism is, or you have questions, you should check out our introduction, our first episode where we talk about the criteria and everything like that.
And we just thought, SM is typically diagnosed before the age of 5. When a child enters either daycare, preschool. So it's a good topic of conversation.
Yeah, based on Facebook and Instagram, it looks like a lot of people have kids who are just getting a diagnosis or starting preschool, so we thought it would be an important topic. I also wanted to give another shout out to someone on Instagram who tagged us in their preschool picture. The account name is diagnosis313.23 SM, which is the diagnosis number for selective mutism, and it's a really cool account. You should definitely check it out. There's all different photos from this person's childhood where the captions are excerpts from her psychological evaluations as a child, but it's just interesting to see what professionals had to say at that time. And she has really cool pictures, so go check her out, follow her on Instagram, and thank you for tagging us. So let's talk about preschool. Selective mutism is usually diagnosed before the age of 5, and it's usually when a kid starts school. People are making fun of me for saying kid, but I'm gonna keep saying it. So kids with SM usually get diagnosed when they start school. I guess usually with preschool, and then that's when the first signs emerge because you're entering a setting where you're expected to talk.
Right, so around the ages of 3, 4, or 5 years old, when kids start either preschool or daycare or sometimes even kindergarten, it can be the first time that these kids are put in a social situation away from the parents where they're expected to speak.
We're going to cover a few of the bigger topics of problems that come up in preschool. So we're going to talk about separation anxiety, show and tell, eating in front of other kids, and toileting is a big topic. And then we're just going to talk about the social aspects of recess and making friends. So I think one of the hardest parts of preschool is dropping off your kid, and a lot of the times you see separation anxiety where the child starts crying because they don't want their parent to leave. It's basically leaving them in a new environment where they're afraid to talk and be around other people. So you see a lot of meltdowns at drop-off time.
I do remember taking you to preschool. One of the workers, the staff members, would always take you and hold you for a while until I had actually left the building because you didn't like drop-off time. I don't really remember you crying when I left because that would have made it very difficult to leave, and I probably would have stuck around. You were just really quiet, but you were looking at me like, "Are you leaving me?"
Yeah.
So I just remember the staff members would always hold you.
I think for me, I kind of don't remember being dropped off in preschool. because I usually went with my younger brother, so it wasn't like, it helped to have at least one person that I was more comfortable with.
And I do remember I would kind of stick around for a couple of minutes, the first few minutes, just to kind of walk you into the classroom and kind of get you distracted or get you involved in playing with an activity or something before I would leave.
I think a big part of that is having like a teacher you like, or at least one other kid in the class that you're comfortable talking to, or not even talking to, just like playing with.
So you did have one of our neighbors was at the same preschool, and she lived on our street, and you would whisper to her. But you knew her from our neighborhood before you went to school with her.
Right. So I think having a relationship with someone else helps with the transition.
It helps lower the anxiety. I guess the goal is really to lower the anxiety or increase the comfort level of the child.
And I think this is something I wanted to talk about with, I guess, more like teenagers, but maybe just for parents to know. This is something that like kind of blew my mind, but it's not even that interesting. But I learned that as like a psychology student, that anxiety goes up and up and up, and it peaks. It always peaks and it always comes down, which when you're experiencing it, it feels like it's never going to end, but anxiety has to end at some point. Like, it builds up and then you have a decrease. So I think like riding it out is important, and understanding that it's going to come down is good.
Yeah, I don't know that a preschooler could grasp that.
No, but I think for a
for
parent to know, like, oh, my kid's freaking out now, but if we can get through this like anxiety attack, basically, it will settle down.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they always talk about fading with school and separation anxiety. So that's basically when the parent is like literally faded out of the room. So they start like right with the child until they are more comfortable, and then they kind of take a few steps back maybe, and eventually they're like working towards being out of the room. And I think what's important about that is engaging them in some kind of like almost distracting activity. Like, the goal is for the kid not even to know that their parent is being faded out, I think.
I guess it sounds kind of like what I did with you, but I didn't know I was doing
right.
that.
But I think like a more gradual approach is helpful than just like, oh, here's my kid, drop him off and leave. Like,
Right, that sounds traumatizing.
It does, and it's scary, yeah.
So I think having the teacher involved that has to be huge in that, to help you fade out.
Right, you need to have a plan with a teacher.
Right, so having a discussion beforehand, having a plan, updating the plan, changing the plan,
right,
to keep it current so that the child can be successful.
And I think for little kids, it's hard to know like what's happened. It feels like the whole universe is just like controlling your life, and you have no control over anything, and things are just happening to you. So I think it's important. Like, I always wanted to know what was coming next, and I wanted a schedule, know what I can expect for the day. So I think even like a visual schedule, or like reviewing verbally like what's coming next, what we're doing now, like when mom's coming back, would be super helpful and like reduce anxiety.
Yeah, and I do remember every night, your best time for talking or sharing your feelings was at bed at night when I was tucking you in. So each night when I tucked you in, you would always ask me about the following day, and we'd always kind of talk about how the next day was going to go, what was going to happen, what your plans were. And you just always wanted to know so you could settle down and go to sleep instead of laying in bed worrying about the next day. So that always did help you. And I think, too, anxiety is really just, don't you think it's the feeling of loss of control?
Yeah, and it's like the unknown. And when you don't know what's coming, your brain just like fills in all the possibilities of what could happen. So it's good to know like what is actually coming.
And I remember some people would criticize me for that, saying I like babied you too much, or I doted on you too much. But I would say, well, she asked me. I think we don't give kids enough credit for, knowing what's going on, or like you were very aware of your surroundings, and you always wanted to know the plan for the family.
Right.
And I think there's nothing
it gave
wrong with
me
that.
anxiety not to know what's happening. And
Right.
knowing helps reduce it, even if it's something you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
At least knowing that it's coming helps.
Yeah. So I think for family members, I don't know, that can be a tough one because it's not kind of the norm. It's almost like I think some people feel like you're getting your toddler's approval for the plans, where you're
But
just
you're not.
informing
You're just
them.
telling them about
Right. You're
what
sharing.
is coming.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's none of their business anyway. People get too involved in other people's parenting.
Yep.
And then we just thought we could throw in some coping mechanisms. I know it's harder to teach kids who are in preschool like how to manage their emotions and anxiety. I had like no skills, I don't think.
Not at that point. We didn't really.
I keep seeing like yoga classes and meditation classes for preschoolers, and I think that's really cool. Like it would be cool to start teaching that skill early on. We had an idea to bring a memento from home. Like a lot of kids have something that like comforts them, like a little stuffed animal or something.
Yeah, a picture of mom and dad, or a picture of the child with mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. There was this is a really cute idea. I'm not like advertising it or anything, but I saw on Instagram there was this girl who had selective mutism, and her mom bought her. It kind of looked like a friendship bracelet, but it was like the mom had one bracelet and the daughter had another, and there was a cute little like poem or something, and it said like, I'll keep my bracelet with me and you keep yours with you, and they like connect us throughout the day, so even when you're apart you still feel connected.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That's really comforting. I would have liked that, I think. Thought it was a cute idea.
We used to do, it wasn't like a formal thing, but just stick a little, you had like a lot of little mini dolls. Like one time we did that worry stone.
I had a little like polished gem that I kept in my pocket, and I think it was placebo, but they would tell you like, this gem reduces anxiety, and if you rub it your worries go away.
Yeah.
So I would actually keep it in my pocket, and like it was more like a fidget, I feel like, because I would play with it in my pocket.
But just something for you to have from home.
Yeah.
In your pocket, something little, familiar, something that brought you comfort.
It's just good to have a plan. Like when I start feeling anxious, I'll take deep breaths or something.
Yep, so deep breaths. You can you can do the yoga at home. There's so many apps out there now and programs on YouTube. There's a lot of different things for relaxation for toddlers. Taking a stuffed animal to preschool.
I don't know if this is like appropriate for preschool kids, but there's like grounding techniques that they teach kids that are like, oh, when you feel anxious, like notice something that you feel, notice something you see. Like, I don't know, it's just like noticing your environment rather than being inside your head and worrying about everything. But I think it's important for like caregivers and like teachers to not overreact when a kid is having anxiety. Like you need to like remain calm and have like a calm voice to keep the kid calm.
Right. I think it's important, I guess, the discussion between the parent and the teachers, so the teachers can recognize that it's not acting up or being fussy or throwing a tantrum, but that it's anxiety and that the child needs to feel safe.
I think there's a lot of disruptive behaviors that stem from not being able to communicate, obviously, and they get viewed as like bad behavior, which then kids get punished for, and it's just not helpful. It's good to have a plan with teachers on how to react to certain behaviors, and we call that a behavior plan.
And I think a lot of times at that age it's regarded as the child's stubborn,
right?
Because they won't speak to you, they're standoffish, they won't participate.
And it's important not to be punishing behaviors like that. You need to be supportive and have a supportive environment.
So communicate with the teacher.
We talked about separation anxiety. Should we move on to show and tell? It's kind of random, but show and tell is like a big cause of anxiety in preschool because it's the first time that you're expected to get up in front of other kids and talk.
Yeah, I know for you always were excited about show and tell. You always,
I loved the idea of show and tell.
Yeah.
But I was too afraid. I don't remember actually doing it.
You were always excited. You'd be up in your room trying to find just the right thing to take for show and tell.
Yeah.
But then I don't actually know if you ever participated or not.
I don't know if I ever did because I don't remember it. But we just had some ideas for show and tell that would help reduce anxiety, maybe obviously communicating with the teacher. So you could do like a video. I know a lot of kids are more comfortable with like recording themselves at home talking and then showing the class or showing the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you presented maybe just to the teacher or just to kids you're comfortable with.
Another tactic would be for the teacher, instead of calling on a child individually to do show and tell, to have it be a volunteer activity. So you have the opportunity to do it if you do feel confident enough to step up and do show and tell. Another idea would be just to have the kids pair off into pairs, and then you just tell your buddy about your item that you brought that day for show and tell.
Mm-hmm. I think all of those are ways to increase the possibility and make kids more comfortable. So we also wanted to talk about eating, and it seems like, not for me, but other kids with SM have issues eating in front of others or eating at school. I don't have a lot of personal experience with this, but I'm wondering if it's just due to like heightened anxiety and you don't feel safe eating or comfortable eating, or you don't even have an appetite because your anxiety's so high. It could also just be that thing where you don't want to do things in front of people, which I experienced a lot, and I can relate to that, like not wanting to do anything to draw attention to yourself. I also thought, this is probably unlikely, but this is something I think of as like a behavior therapist, that if like a snack is hard to open, like they're probably not going to ask for help, and then that would result in them not eating. So I think it's important to address those things, maybe by having like smaller groups, or I don't know. It's kind of a hard...
I think sometimes too, I know some preschools have you package your own lunch, and then other preschools provide the food and all the kids are eating the same food.
Right.
So I kind of wonder if it's less of an issue when they're all eating the same food versus you're packing your own lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, again, I think communication with the teacher,
right.
Helping you open the packages, maybe setting the child up to eat, so the child just has to basically,
Right, because eating is important. It's just like going to the bathroom. It's like a necessary thing that has to happen during the day.
It's just all about communication and making the child feel less anxious, less fearful, more comfortable, more at ease. And talking to your child. The child, these
right.
kids can really tell you. I mean, they usually, I think you used to make excuses and say, well, I wasn't hungry, or, I just didn't want to, or I didn't like it.
Yeah.
You'd always have a reason for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe having you help pack the lunch.
Yeah, and then you get some buy-in where kids are picking what they're interested in and what they like. They're more likely to eat what they pick.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, just talking with the teacher and asking what goes on at lunchtime, at mealtime. Like, could you please keep an eye on my child and, see that they have something to eat during the day.
Even, like, when everyone's done eating, if you give them the option, they might be more likely to eat when no one's watching. Mm-hmm. It all depends on why they're not eating, which it's probably individual for each kid.
Right.
We're going to talk about toileting. It's a big topic in preschool. It's big in elementary school, too, but we saved it for preschool. I know we talked about it a little bit in the last episode.
Mm-hmm. So at least here in the U.S., I know a lot of preschool age or kindergarten age. Actually, by kindergarten, you already are toileting yourself, but a lot of the preschools here require you to be toilet trained before you can actually enroll in preschool.
And we talked about this when we were making notes for the podcast, and we were talking about how a lot of kids are toilet trained at home, and then if they have selective mutism and they're put in this new environment and they're starting preschool, all of a sudden they're regressing because they're not comfortable using the toilet or at school, or they're not comfortable asking, or they just don't want, they have anxiety and they just hold it instead of drawing attention to themselves.
Right. I think holding urine or holding it is a huge issue for selective mutism children. Yeah,
it seems to be a common topic that we see on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. I think a big part of it, at least for you, was the electronic or the automatic flushing toilets.
Yes, I was terrified of them.
It was scary, the sound. It was, all of a sudden you couldn't predict when it was going to flush.
Right, because when you're small, the sensor, it doesn't see you because you have a small body.
Yep.
And it will just go off while you're sitting on it, and it's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. I used to actually cover it with my hand,
Mm-hmm.
but the odd time it didn't work. And
I know. I've heard of covering it with a sticky note so that it doesn't go off while you're sitting there.
I think, toileting has so many. First of all, there's getting to the toilet, either asking to use the toilet, or even if you don't have to ask, actually standing up in front of other people and walking towards the bathroom because you don't want anyone to ask you, where are you going?
Yeah.
That can even be fearful.
Yeah, exactly.
I know a lot of kids with SM have sensory issues.
Yeah.
And wiping yourself can be an issue for those children.
There's so many issues. We talked about this in the other episode, but I think having like some kind of nonverbal communication or like augmentative communication, so like having a card you exchange or like having a bathroom pass that you just always have access to so you can go whenever you want and you don't have to verbally ask a teacher might help. And then also having like an open door to the bathroom policy where you're just allowed to use it whenever you need it.
I think too it also depends sometimes. I think you did better. You went to one place where they had the bathroom was actually in the back of the classroom.
Yeah.
And it was a single individual bathroom.
A lot of preschools have that.
Yeah, the bigger schools have the row of stalls, but I think that's harder actually than going into an individual bathroom yourself.
Yeah, because you feel like you're not alone in the stalls.
Mm.
Because there's people next to you. I think scheduling bathroom visits is important. I'm pretty sure a lot of preschools do that, where they just want everyone to use the bathroom at a certain time. So then you're being prompted to, and there's no, attention on you specifically because the whole class is doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. It really depends on each kid and why they're not using the bathroom at school.
And I think preschool's different than kindergarten.
Right.
Because, preschool, you're still all lining up, you're going to the washroom, all at the same time kind of thing, one at a time, but you're part of a group, like you just said. But then I think kindergarten, there's a lot more, interaction, kids are more verbal. Yeah, I think it's a lot tougher in kindergarten. I think, I know for Chelsea, I don't know if you want me to share this, but one time there was an issue in kindergarten where she'd gone into the stall, and then somebody peeked underneath the stall, and so that ruined that. Then she was terrified to go there. There were several issues. Somebody was going to peek underneath the stall, flushing of the toilets, peeing at the same time as everybody else. And then one day, one of the girls held the door when you were trying to get out of the stall. And so to escape, you had to climb underneath the stall, which was quite traumatizing. Mm-hmm. Again, communication with the teacher is just so huge.
And the kid, if they can talk about why they're feeling anxious, you can learn a lot from that, and you can change the environment to support them.
Yeah. And I remember when you were in counseling, this wasn't preschool, I think this was actually kindergarten, but one of the goals was for us to go to a public washroom, and we were supposed to go into every stall and flush the toilet one after another down the row.
Yeah, that's actually called flooding, when you, put yourself in, you face your fear, and you do it to the extreme. So flushing every single toilet was an extreme measure.
We did not accomplish that.
No, I think a more gradual approach would be better. You withstand the sound of it. I don't know. With desensitization, you might start with just listening to a recording of a toilet flushing like that, and then you kind of work up to standing outside the bathroom with it flushing, and then standing inside the bathroom, then standing right in the stall with it flushing, and you're obviously reinforcing success with that.
And nothing bad's going to happen when we
flush.
It's
just getting over the fear. And I don't think I had a reason to be afraid. I didn't think I was going to get sucked into the toilet or anything. I just thought the sound was
I think
scary.
Mostly the sound, because it was so loud and all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I remember I did try negotiating with you that I would be the person to flush the toilets, but no, you wouldn't go for that.
What does that
Like
mean?
instead of you going in each stall and flushing, that was too fearful for you. So I
yeah.
remember trying to negotiate with you, saying I would go in and flush them.
Mm.
But anyway, we didn't do that. But that is an idea for maybe
Yeah.
other people to try. And also sticker charts. Again,
Right.
we did do sticker charts for using the bathroom
Mm-hmm.
successfully, independently. And I remember, like, I'd always tell when you hadn't gone, because the minute you got home from school, you literally would run to the bathroom and pee.
Yeah.
But I could tell you had held it all day.
Yeah, I did. And I think sometimes I didn't even know that I needed to go to the bathroom because I was so worried about everything else going on that my brain wasn't like, oh, you should probably pee.
Yeah,
It was just like, I'm nervous about the kids and what is happening to me and what we're doing, what I'm going to have to do. And your brain just doesn't even realize you have to pee. So we're going to talk about the social aspects of preschool, and I wanted to talk about how with selective mutism, there's a cycle where it makes it harder and harder to talk because you get stuck in this pattern of behavior. So it starts with a child being prompted to talk or being expected to talk in a certain situation, and the anxiety rushes in. You get too overwhelmed with anxiety that you just can't talk. So you're silent, and then because you're silent, it's an awkward silence, and the adult usually comes in and rescues you by either talking for you or just changing the subject. And then as a result, both the child and the adult involved, their anxiety's lowered, so they're escaping the situation.
So it's almost like a reward.
Right. So you're rewarded for that behavior, basically, and you're more likely to do it in the future, which is called negative reinforcement. So this cycle just keeps happening and happening. So as this goes on, it gets harder and harder to break that cycle. And what also plays into that is the expectation of all the other kids. They start to realize, like, you just don't talk. So then when you do, it's like a humongous deal. Mm-hmm. And you get even more attention drawn on you, which is even worse. So you never break the cycle.
So how do you break the cycle? I mean, what point in that cycle should it change?
When you are expected to talk or someone asks you a question, the adult should pause and give you a chance to answer. And it might seem really awkward at first because it's going to take a long time to get any kind of response, but I think even like a nod or a gesture is worth celebrating, and you're going to gradually move up from that. I think progress it's not going to be like automatic, and it's going to take a lot of time, but you shouldn't give up just because it takes a long time.
And that's so hard as a parent, though, because you feel so badly for the child, like that awkward silence. Like, I know it's easy to wait a few seconds, but as that pause goes on, it's so hard not to jump in and just help your child.
It feels like you're helping them, but you're just like continuing the cycle.
That's true. That's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And the earlier this happens in a child's life, I think the better. Like, and you're probably not even going to remember preschool. I guess I remember preschool.
But because it was traumatic.
Yeah.
So early intervention is key,
because
the more ingrained these behaviors come, the harder it is to change them or correct them.
You don't outgrow selective mutism. It changes because you're changing your behavior. And it's not easy to do that.
Which is why it's so difficult with teenagers. I think by the time the behaviors are so ingrained that it's really...
It makes it harder and harder to break because you have years and years of that pattern to break. So that has to do a lot with social situations in preschool, such as making friends and the other kids expecting you not to talk because you have a history of not talking. So I just have this story where I had one friend in preschool, the one that I knew before I started preschool, and I would whisper to her. She was the only person I would kind of talk to, but I would never talk to her if other kids were around. So I just remember one time at recess, she started playing with other kids more, and she wanted me to play with them too, but I couldn't. Like, I just wouldn't do it. And I just remember I was fed up, and I was like, I'm going to get her back. Like, I'm going to get her to play with me again. And I remember going into, those, like, plastic houses they had. And I went in there, and all the kids were, like, playing with the daddy long legs. And I just wanted to get her to come play with me. So that was the first time I spoke, I think, in front of other people at preschool. And I think I just said, like, can you come play with... It was a very short sentence, but I said, like, come with me or something. And everyone was losing their mind. Like, kids were running around screaming, like, telling everyone, Chelsea just talked, she just talked. Like, and, like, I don't think I ever talked again at preschool because that was a very negative experience for me. And I could just feel, like, the blood, like, rushing into my face and, like, you get, like, dizzy and, yeah. All the attention. It's very aversive.
When you were at that preschool, we did have an evaluation done, and it was actually the town we live in. They sent a group from the school system to watch you and observe you on the playground. And it was for placement for kindergarten. So they did have a special kindergarten for sort of a special ed class, and they were evaluating to see if you were appropriate for that class. So they came to watch you on the playground. And I didn't really realize or know this was going on, that you were only speaking to this one friend. And they put in the assessment that if other children came near, then you would stop or you would move away. You'd actually get up and move away. And they said that when you were very aware of them being there, and that you would not speak, or if you were whispering to your friend, that you would clam up and stop because you saw them approaching.
Yeah. I was always very aware.
And you would speak to other kids through this one friend. You would whisper to her to tell them what you wanted to say.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of scary looking back, because I think having getting hurt or something, I would not tell someone. I remember having an accident at preschool, and I just, like, was too embarrassed to tell anyone. So I just was, like, walking around with pee pants in the playground by myself because I didn't want anyone to see it and, like, get attention drawn to me. And that's really sad. And I just think of, like, kids getting hurt and not being able to tell anyone. I wouldn't even cry. Like, most kids would cry if they got hurt.
I remember one time, I think you were just 3, and we had a swing set in the backyard. And I remember you jumping off the swing. You, like, jumped off the swing, and then that was it for playing on the swing set. But then when I brought you in the house, I don't know how I discovered it, but you had actually gotten stung by a bee on your back. But you hadn't cried, you didn't flinch, like you didn't want me to find out about it.
Yeah. It was worse for people to be, like, fussing over it.
I know, that's heartbreaking.
I know,
poor kids.
There must be, like, a way. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you don't even want attention for it.
Do you want to talk about the chipmunk story at preschool?
The chipmunk story. This is just a silly story, but I remember it very clearly. And I think it was, like, a really hot day, and we were filling up the, like, a kiddie pool. And I was like, I don't know, we were supposed to go get our bathing suits on soon, but I wasn't in my bathing suit yet, and I was wearing, like, shorts and a t-shirt. And I just saw these, like, 2 chipmunks chasing each other. And they were, like, running all over the place, just chasing each other. And all of a sudden, they just ran up my leg and went through my shorts and up my shirt and came out my sleeve. And I just, like, froze. And I was just hoping nobody saw it. And I never said anything about it, I don't think.
Well, when I showed up to pick you up that day, the teachers couldn't wait to tell me what had happened.
They probably thought I was, like, a tree because I wasn't doing anything. And I was so quiet.
They were so excited they couldn't believe that these chipmunks had, run up your shirt and up your pants. And I just remember you were, like, sitting there, like, blank-faced. Like, you did not want us talking about it. You just wanted to pretend the whole thing hadn't happened.
Because those chipmunks drew a lot of attention to me that I didn't want. Hopefully you found something useful out of what we have to say about preschool. I know a lot has changed since when I was in preschool. Like, communication's obviously key. We've said that a million times. Talking to the teacher, talking to your kid. Dealing with anxiety as it relates to your child. I see a lot of people asking for advice from other people, and just because other kids with selective mutism are having similar issues doesn't mean it's going to be solved in the same way. So I think trying different things is super important, and not just going off of what other people say, because it might not work for you.
And I know that we talked about in the kindergarten episode or in the school episode, we talked about preparing before you even start school. And I think the same thing's true for preschool, is to actually, before the first day of preschool, maybe go to the preschool, walk around the playground, maybe go in the classroom, meet the teacher, just to prepare a little bit and to take away some of that anxiety of the first day. Right, preschool's tough because that's when, I mean, a lot of kids, when they go into preschool, the parents don't yet have a diagnosis. They don't even know anything's wrong.
Yeah, and then
It's
you start
usually
seeing problems.
In preschool when issues are identified. True.
So I think getting right on top of it is super important. Don't wait for things to change magically. You're going to have to put some effort in. I think in preschool, kids are more accepting, and it's easier to start having friendships. And kids who don't have selective mutism are gonna be this is the time they're gonna be the most accepting. And I think it's great to have like play dates, and they're not even gonna be that upset that they're not talking, because they're like, oh, we still play together. And I think that's super important, to have at least someone that you're comfortable with at preschool.
Right, I mean, it's true, because typically you'll do parallel play first and then progress to playing with a child. So maybe if you can find that one child that is maybe more like your child that you think they're going to interact with, have them paired up, have some play dates ahead of time before the school year or preschool starts, just to build that relationship or just trust.
This will be coming out in October. I guess we're recording it right now, and it's the end of September. But October is Selective Mutism Awareness Month. So we want to encourage you to share this podcast to spread awareness with anyone you know who might be interested. You might want to share it with family. I think it's hard to explain to family, and it would be good to have some more understanding.
I think if they know that it is a real thing, and there's
a podcast about it.
There's thousands of kids out there suffering with this. It's not just my child, and I'm not being an overbearing parent. I keep seeing that in comments.
Yeah, like, oh, they'll grow out of it. They're just shy.
Yeah, and I experienced that myself with you. People didn't want to believe it was actually a diagnosis.
Yeah.
It was just, oh, she's shy. Like, get over it.
Yep. There's that whole mentality of, like, they just need to toughen up.
Yes, yeah.
But that doesn't work.
Yeah, so anyway, share it, help educate about SM. And I just want to mention that Child Mind Institute in New York City is having a workshop. I believe it starts October 16th, and it's I think it's titled Selective Mutism 101, and it's completely free. I saw this on their website.
Stephen Kurtz also has a free e-course on selective mutism. It's kind of the same idea. It's all about the basics of selective mutism. It's on his website at kurtzpsychology.com. You should definitely check it out if you haven't already.
And Kurtz is Kurtz or Kurtz for people in Canada.
And the UK, right?
I think so.
Yeah. We have listeners from all over the place. We did a little poll and asked where people are from. It was really cool.
Yeah, all over worldwide. So it's been a lot of fun.
It has been fun. Well, thank you so much for listening again, and go rate us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a nice review. Yeah. That would be super awesome.
Thank you for listening to it out loud.
We'll see you next time.